that was one of our generators for pedestrian incidents back in the early days of junction. So we don't need, it's not safe. Farming is so close to that round trips. It just has so much interaction. It's great. So, yeah, our work out for us. Anything else this week? Shows are up. We have 2 new shows this year. We're trying to think. If you want extra hotels that's coming in, there's like shows merging in with other shows that are all mixing, so there's a little more traffic. I'll get you guys those notes pretty quick here. If we get you guys the end of the week, just kind of all that information coming in and I'll blast it out across all these stuff. So
More shows on it.
you're out.
Done.
Woo! That is going to come back.
Show making 80,000.
It's just, yeah, we were going to make sure the place. That's what we call the show. Exactly right.
You need more water skip. Can I carry your luggage?
Mr. C's pawn shop. That's what's going to be. Come on, Mr. C's.
Bada bing, bada boom.
That's right.
Yeah.
What do you got, asshole?
Bring it to go you. Every 24/7. I'm supposed to be culturally offended.
You should be culturally offended. Well, you will. I know.
Can I get an early retirement out of that?
No.
Oh,
I'm Irish.
Never mind.
Awesome. Everything's going. Good.
I think it'll be really nice once they get that primary hotel.
Yeah,
Have a
great.
TCC.
Yeah. Lopez is supposed to be pretty quick. I mean, it's under the line right now. That's the big one. That's right. Oh, yeah.
Is he going to keep the frame and just gut the inside?
Yeah. The big one. Roll on top.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's been up to the landmark. Well, for reasons. He's got a $20 million tax liability. So what he waited for, the opportunities of investment may work. So he's got outside investment money in, so it's offset some high market, it's all combination. Yeah. This conversation. It's hearing, I just, because all you got is a picture of your feet. What mic is on? Should be the mic. That's good. Microphone.
Julie.
Oh, yeah.
Get under something that I hate and said, encouraging feedback.
We're getting a lot more spam mail than everyone was fishing. 6 notice. You don't even get the first notice. Not the jack anymore, but yeah, you know, when we get them, I'm very out her.
I get them, I do not my problem. So this is a unit where it's either, or two, or one.
Really good.
Well, we should make this, we don't have an NTO unit. Used to be there.
That's like the dizzy issue.
Bigger.
So we used to get notes.
We're a trip, got it. Walk over.
And we had to make a there was we didn't go ourselves. Injuries from the back was like down the night. So I went to scratch trios. Seeing where they guys all the whole so we had to make up. Last night, and we boys went off the ring, and it's first. It's one of these, it's like some of them, it's like, what do you do, we did, and it's like, why? There's money, but it's just not just, it's Friday, about 6:52, so it came up in the actual, 32, last 5 weeks, so. It's getting better, but I gotta work, it's like working on me, so it's just whenever this, you know, inquire about that, get my fat ass up here. And I supervised. Yeah, 2907 Norfolk. And it's medical. The problem is like the city, nothing's covered. So it's like,
Is it like a
oh, that was
in-house or is it like
it's like appointments, go through, they give you a plan, you follow the plan. It's like trying to do some exercise and get the weight off. Keep an eye on your supervisors.
in natural way, so it's not like doing
It's kind of intern. Just trying to find
find somebody like you would trust with.
Well, that's true. That just we're talking about bringing back arbitration. I said, you do that, and I always say, I'm just like, it doesn't generate. It's always, there's people that surround us.
That's what I said. What did you say, call it?
I told him, yeah, get this video real quick and then walk over there. I'll be like, what are you doing? Devastation. So every time he leaves the company office, it's perfect. Nice to get something like that. Yes. They went around and around about it.
And then we got 10 bird helmets, and then I got a box of range helmets. And I put the safety instructions right now.
since it's a bulk list, someone just credit and responds to this. So why would Phil need to know what it says don't know.
Are you just coming here?
It was crazy. Don't know. I mean, so
they can at least go back on it. If
he was
Here or at the same
I thought that was kind of tricky.
I got an office at 10:45.
it's hard to get kids. I just ride motorcycles.
You're one of the wild experiences. That's the most dangerous one.
But you were on
We're not there. And then 2 years later, so this is the process.
Yeah, they're like the military helmets, right? It's like stop the light, stop the one. Right, yeah. They're actually pretty cool. Right, you can listen to what I'm sharing more. Rock it up.
But when I started riding, you didn't have I know I did. You don't know how many times I've said never by the grace of God.
For the life. It's continuing. Yeah, that's but yeah, we need to just make sure we they're in the there were yeah. They're on the last one. So I would guess. But I think there's another one. Yeah, we were supposed to be last year. But I think as far as like they'll just go right through. Right, but they'll go straight over because it'll generally be the out here. And then they'll so you're like I might do it again. Sorry. So I'm either, you know what, I'm agnostic. Whether you're somehow, for me, it's a choice.
I probably should go right now.
Oh, so if there's not going to happen in the year next year.
Right. To have an executive.
So that's where the executive is at.
And then like we said,
There's also one city that said, any regrets? Coming to Tucson?
You know, it's, there's so much about that I like about it. There's something that's different from the other stuff. It's been a long time since I've been to a place that I've gone to.
And that actually, sure.
So that part is like, I don't even have to get there to have a place. Yeah. I like
That is fine, I'll put that sort of information. What part of town you guys
it. So right now, it's called Midtown, right? We're near this one.
Borderline east side.
Yeah, very good. It's funny, guys. Most of our years, funny thing is like, it's funny, right? When we lived in Mesa, how often did I see here? Probably about the same amount that I've seen in town.
Right.
We should talk about that. I don't know where all those conversations.
This summer, I kept saying, mornings.
Wow, yeah, you did say you could actually do stuff.
One of the issues that you were addressing,
I heard that the city is he was given direction. The city was given direction.
Yeah. Hey, listen, your house. Sure.
the concern is that,
Well, when I did it, and not that you much.
you know, what we were trying to do is, there are places where it makes a lot of sense. You know, but
Yeah, well, I will say that he came down to me and said,
Towards
we
my
need to develop.
Yeah, just nobody understands. Yeah, there's like, I figured it out.
Assistant director should have the way statement could provide that in a rate format.
So that's all.
I said, yeah, we actually did that already for Tosca for the community plan. We need some changes. So,
It's really
stuff still surviving. Yes. Some of the other changes.
You know something I don't. Oh no. Okay. You had that look. You're like, oh, yes. Yes. Okay.
I don't think it's out here. I don't think it's out here. My husband's so he gets so he's part of the
We're at California.
So because he has to watch many of these. That one's really good. Like it says, oh my God, so much about
We haven't seen it yet.
Rockstar. It's very dark. The Mr. Rogers neighborhood. You saw the other one.
You got a poll on the book, but I'm just like,
You call me too.
we did that. Yeah. Like, so we get there and I'm like, I had a drink.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, so it's probably,
Yeah.
60 properties. I don't know, we took, I want to say it's 30 takes and then another 30. So, a lot of times, though, just because doesn't mean that it's not.
I suppose dangerous.
And so if someone can use that, another one, but what it takes is for us to actually see the or they don't want us to try that. Almost across the board nowadays. Every time I come in, it's for like 5 years. I just want to make sure haven't been sure yet, so.
Because people that have those long-term water supplies and emails that they're asking for, they don't know if they're back. So, Jared, you can use short as regress short seals and waves.
Yes.
Pretty
boom. It takes off. You're at 60 miles an hour. Oh, yeah. What's that? That which test?
It was coming, so.
Low. Yeah, right. Hard time. But anyway, great. But anyway, so I'm doing an EV stuff. About so I just want to look at the city. You started out as a city with parking, but I took this you guys plan. You don't really know yet. I said, it's stuff these people work through. These people kept saying, they keep saying, as Donovan said, these people are saying, oh, and that's what you do. Give you 100%. For some of the others, but a lot of these is like install the ones that didn't want to multi-charge, multi-charge. Yeah, but it's because they want to be part of it. It's just like over 20 volts. Right. But it might take 6 hours to charge up. And if we really want 20%, well, they can go to lunch. That's right. That's right. Yeah. You know, that seems to make more sense than
Yeah, I'm with you. So it'll be interesting to see if
because I remember 100-mile range, and it takes 6 hours to charge.
so when EV wanted to get out of General Motors, I was wondering and that car took a long time to charge. Super cool. And the charge here is a big charger, but also this charging stations around. Battery storage.
This one, the new Tesla, will have a 300-mile range.
It's awesome.
So that matches just like
It does, yeah.
my car is 30. So flexible, a quick charger is not a problem. And mile guarantee on the back. Because Tesla cools the back.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas like the Leaf and all of that.
Over 80 years, it's certainly comes before it's over.
Yeah, I mean, the technology is changing, and I didn't realize that. I remember the old stuff. And I remember this Tesla. Yeah. And you can tell it what you never do. I didn't talk to it. Right. Wow. Is it when you they can tell you what stops you have to make when will alert you and say you have 20% left and you have a charging station in 14 miles. So it tells you all that. So you don't know what's starting. And it's trying to be that decision that you have to make across the board. Is whether you want apple pie, deep dish,
Love that.
which is not going to
Give me a reference. Yeah.
I know that I just walked through the
Yeah, and I was gonna go a little higher, but I'm gonna go all up. Good for you. Yeah, see, the prices. They're five. I got 2 more days. Yeah, 7-0. You don't look at it. I didn't really start showing up until 60 yet, but I was helping. I was trying to, I was anchoring to that time. Yeah. I was up on the finally, after 6 months, I got to see a real scholar. Happy New Year to you.
We're the last people charging that. Yeah, there's a real line. Our places are totally different. Me too. Well, when I say deserve, we were careful with kind of that's true.
We need a motion to return to study session.
So moved.
What is the council's pleasure for item 2? Oh, yeah, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. What is the council's pleasure for item 2?
I think Councilmember Kozaczek has this item.
Steve.
I know I'm looking at it. That's the, is that the music hall?
It is.
All right, got it. So I move that we direct the city manager to proceed as discussed in executive session to continue negotiations with Rio Nuevo relating to this property. Consistent with the terms discussed in executive session, the manager is directed to return to the mayor and council with any proposed agreement for our mayor and council consideration and approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. What is the council's pleasure for item 4?
Mayor, I would ask for a motion authorizing, directing the city attorney to resolve this matter in the manner discussed in executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. What is the council's pleasure for item 6?
And Mayor Romero, I'd ask for the same motion in this regard to authorize and direct the city attorney to resolve this matter as discussed in executive session.
So moved again.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. What is the council's pleasure for item 8?
I move that mayor and council approve the resolution of this case through settlement in the amount of $55,000.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. What is the council's pleasure for item 10?
Madam Mayor, I move the mayor and council direct the city attorney and city manager to proceed as discussed in executive session and specifically do the following. Number 1, prepare to call a candidate election for wards 3, 5, and 6 for November 2021, as provided by the city charter and as affirmed by the city voters with their vote on Proposition 408 in 2018. Number 2, to file such legal actions as may be necessary to assert our charter authority and the will of Tucson's voters and to resolve the conflicts between the charter and AZ statutes relating to the time for holding local candidate elections. Number 3, to include in those legal actions the city's assertion that ARS 16204 cannot be applied to the city as a charter city with respect to the timing of either candidate or non-candidate elections, including the charter amendment elections that are purely a matter of local concern.
Second that.
So there is a motion and a second. Any discussion? All righty. So there's no discussion. All those in favor of this motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. What is the council's pleasure for item 12?
Mayor, I would ask for a motion that would direct the city manager, city attorney, and staff to proceed as discussed in executive session and to continue all actions that are appropriate to ensure that Tucson Water continues to serve safe water to its customers. Also to amend the city's obligations under the TARP consent decree as may be needed to protect public health and safety and advance the city's interests. These actions would include working with the EPA and seeking relief from the city's obligation to serve TARP-treated water to customers. And finally, direction to staff to pursue any available federal funding to address PFAS issues long-term.
So move. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a couple of questions.
Councilmember Kozachik?
The last council meeting raised the issue of the city pursuing an ordinance by which we would prevent ourselves and others from using or disposing of AFFF foam in the city limits. And I'd like to get an update on where we are with that.
Mayor, Councilmember Kozachik, members of the council, we're still examining the city's authority to regulate in that manner. What I expect is that while it's not likely we can regulate certain users in terms of their ability to purchase, possess, or use particular chemicals such as the Air Force or the airport or other sovereign entities, what we are exploring is the ability to regulate the disposal of those materials, particularly in a manner that may implicate our water system. So we will be in communications with other regulatory agencies and examining our own charter and statutory authority to impose regulations on the disposal of those materials that may affect either our drinking water or our stormwater system.
And with respect to our own use and disposal?
And so we are exploring, and it's clear the council's direction with respect to getting away from the use of products that contain these contaminants that are making their way into the groundwater. TFD is moving as quickly as possible to move to alternative products, has identified and is verifying an alternative product, both as being available and having the firefighting qualities that they need. And they're moving as quickly as possible to switch to that product, and we will update the mayor and council as soon as we can to confirm that changeover.
Okay, and just to reiterate what I said last time we met, if the product or products that TFD is looking at right now are found to be inadequate for whatever reason, there are fluorine-free foams that are being used worldwide that have been found to be effective at every major airport throughout Australia, for example, and so the products are out there.
So, Councilmember Kozachik, also the Department of Defense Authorization Act really gives direction to air forces and military installations around the country to stop using fluorinated products within the next 3 years. So that direction is given, but I understand this is an urgent public health issue that the mayor and council must address immediately. And so the disposal of these products in our systems are a matter of huge concern. One of the direction given by mayor and council is to work with Pima County for their wastewater control and how we can work together, the city of Tucson and Pima County, in terms of the use and regulating use, but at the same time regulating the disposal of these products into our wastewater systems. So that direction has been clearly given by my colleagues and I on the council, and we expect to get an update within the next 30 days just to see how the conversation with Pima County moves forward.
And that's the point, is that while we may be prohibited from telling another jurisdiction or the Defense Department what they can buy, the disposal is the key part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Buy what you want, but don't dispose of it within our system. And the problem with the federal legislation that we're looking at now is it's got a 3-year time window, and they already have 2 million gallons of this stuff sitting all over the country. So its disposal is the real key to it.
Right, and I think we can collaborate with Pima County on that same issue, on the disposal of this issue. So I think it's, again, this particular mayor and council have been very diligent about acting immediately on issues of public health, especially with our drinking water in our city. But the sooner we move forward on this, the better. And so, you know, Tucson Water serves 750,000 people across our city's jurisdictions. And so it's important that we act on it immediately. I don't know if now is an appropriate time to talk about the work that we're doing with our congressional delegation regarding the PFAS Action Act, H.R. 535. I don't know if Andrew Greenhill is here, but I have sent a letter on behalf of Mayor and Council to Arizona's congressional delegation urging them to support H.R. 535, which is the PFAS Action Act. I'm also actively working with Congressman Grijalva to include language in that bill that would allocate funds for the reimbursement of cities that have already made expenses on water treatment related to PFAS. And so I know that the House Rules Committee was taking up that amendment today, actually right now at 5 p.m. And so, Andrew, would you like to include a little bit more information about this particular act and the amendment that could make all the difference in the world for the city of Tucson?
Yeah, sure. Mayor Romero, members of the council. As Mayor Romero said, the H.R. 535, which Mayor and Council have voted to support, is going to be in front of Congress this week. It has a number of hurdles to go through, but it's likely to be voted on the House floor either Friday of this week, maybe early next week. There were a number of amendments that were sought, including one of which Chairman Grijalva is a co-sponsor, and it has to do with a provision that would add some money towards PFAS treatment in local communities. It includes $100 million a year over 2 years that would be made available if H.R. 535 becomes law. Just to be clear, that's different than the $100 million that was appropriated and passed by Congress last calendar year, just last month. So that is in front of Congress. There's an amendment, as Mayor Romero has mentioned, that would add another $25 million per year, or $50 million total. That would be eligible, that would be available for communities for reimbursement of past costs. That other $100 million is for new costs. And so that amendment, as well as other amendments to the bill, are in front of the Rules Committee as we speak, and then they'll be in front of the House later this week, and then hopefully we'll have resolution and a vote of support in the Congress for the bill by, again, the end of this week, early next week.
And I think, Andrew, that it's very important to add that particular amendment in the case of Tucson Water that is already investing. We're already spending money to keep our water safe from PFAS in terms of delivery. And that is costing the city of Tucson and Tucson Water money. And so that reimbursement is a very important point that we are, adding as an amendment through Congressman Grijalva's change in language. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're moving in an effective manner, and the quicker we can move, the better. And so I'm looking forward to that continued conversation with Pima County in terms of disposal. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any against? Motion passes 7-0. Item 13, I have requested staff provide an update on the draft e-scooter action plans prepared by Bird and Razor. And as I let Director Alarcon join us at the table, I just wanted to make sure that I set this item up a bit. Back in, what was it, December? We requested, early December, Mayor and Council requested an action plan for both companies doing business with the City of Tucson, both Bird and Razor, to put an action plan together not only for the street fair that was happening at 4th Avenue, the December street fair, that is regularly scheduled, and we've had it for many, many years in the City of Tucson, but to address some issues where neighbors primarily in Ward 6 are encountering issues with the e-scooters. Some of the issues that we discussed that were of concern to both the 4th Avenue Merchants Association and the neighborhoods surrounding the area were issues of enforcement, issues of parking, issues of safety and education, and access to low-cost programs for low-income residents. And so I'd like to request that our city manager and Director Alarcon give us an update as to these issues that were presented at that time so that we can continue with the program until the March deadline so that we could do a review. I personally want to make sure that this particular program is successful in the City of Tucson. It is a micro-transit, I believe it's called, a micro-transit option for many people using our transit system to connect to the last quarter mile, half a mile to where they need to get at. And so if successful, we will have an additional transit mobility option for the residents of the City of Tucson. So I think it is in the best interest of the companies of the City of Tucson and of the residents and transit users of our community to be able to find solutions for the issues that we've found so far affecting neighborhoods and merchants surrounding the areas where these e-scooters are mostly used at. So I'll patch the issue through over to the city manager and our transportation and mobility department director, Diana Alarcon.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, just as a follow-up to the conversation we had in December, after that meeting, I sent a directive to Director Alarcon basically outlining that although Councilman Kozacek's motion did not pass to stop the pilot program, that did not mean that there were not concerns, and this council had expressed some concerns on a variety of fronts with regard to the e-scooter program. So with that, the director and her staff met with them, outlined an action plan, which I had asked be done within a couple of weeks of that meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Diana, and she can give you an update on not only the action plan, but where we're going moving forward.
And before Diana starts with her presentation, I do want to acknowledge that Michael Einstein is here from Bird. If you all have any questions, we also invited a representative from Razor to be here. I don't know if they're here. Oh, their flights got canceled.
Correct.
But we also have, thanks to Bird, was it Razor and Bird? Razor and Bird, we have some helmets that they're giving out to anyone in the city of Tucson that are requesting it, and I believe that the mayor's offices and council offices can also request that we have helmets at our council offices so that we can dispose to the community so that they can use them. Thank you, Diana.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. And thank you for this opportunity to come back and visit with you on a follow-up. And as mentioned, we do have a representative from Bird here. And unfortunately, Razor was on their way, but their flight got canceled at the last minute. So whatever questions you have for them, we'll make sure we take them and get that back to you as well. But at the last study session, the primary focus was really on safety and education, the enforcement, preferred parking zones, and special events. We were very successful with the 4th Avenue Street Fair with what was actually put into place with geofencing it out. Bird and Razor also brought in additional staff that actually were on site for the entire weekend to make sure that there were no issues with either the scooters entering into the geofenced area or that they were not creating a problem on the perimeter. So we had some really good success, and we were excited about that. But just to summarize some of the things that have been implemented, we did share with y'all the action plans that was actually sent out earlier, late last week, and then again we sent it out yesterday as an online version for you as well. But just to kind of touch on some of the things that we have been working on over the past 30 days with both of them, from the safety and the helmet use, free helmets have been and will continue to be available on pop-up events. They are working with different nonprofit and private companies and providing that. They're also providing mailing helmets. So if they get a request for a helmet, they're actually also mailing it to individuals because we really do want to promote the safety. They're also, as many helmets as you would like, would love to distribute to all the ward office as well as the mayor, so thank you. So that y'all have the helmets to offer to our residents throughout the city. And they've also initiated what they're calling the helmet selfie. So basically they're asking and encouraging the folks to take a picture with the helmet on, and then if they snap that and send it in, they're actually offering an incentive and a discount for the next ride. So those programs have actually been put into place, which we're really excited about.
Helmet safety option?
So both Bird and Razor are both doing it.
Okay.
So on education, but it was initiated through Bird, but Razor is also doing it as well. Education, on the education side, we are continuing to work with the Nonprofit Association as well as wherever there's an opportunity to partner on monthly in-person pop-up events. We're working on that calendar, and we'll be providing that to y'all just so you know what events both Bird and Razor will be involved in. They are partnering with local neighborhood and business and nonprofits and university groups at these different events, and I believe also they're working very closely with Living Street Alliance with organizing some of the opportunities that Living Street does throughout the city as well. They are working on a new low-income cash pay promotional materials that we'll be distributing at the pop-ups as well, so we are working on that program, or they're working on that program on our behalf, and they have and they'll continue to deploy additional staff, especially during high ridership. And again, they're able to collect that data and actually target that. So that's been part of the education and also the enforcement. So on the enforcement side, they have also been saying we have defined on 4th Avenue especially designated parking, and we're in the process of putting that together today. And we're looking to have that done and completed and in place by January 17th. That's requiring a little bit of work on our part as well as also on their part. But then at the end of that ride, they're going to be promoting to take a selfie showing where they parked it, and again, offering an incentive. So again, encouraging the good behavior when it comes to parking. They're also going to be doing some pop-up messaging for a pre-ride that says that you need to, if you're going to be along this is where you need to leave it, stay off the sidewalk, those type of things. So again, we want to try to be proactive. They're actually working toward being proactive. They're also going to include on that no double riding as well, and we just hope people are respectful of that. Their new end of the ride pop in, again, acknowledging that they've met the parking requirements, they're putting it in the appropriate place, and then offering an incentive for the next ride. And if they have continuous offenders, they're actually going to either they're going to provide a warning, suspend, and then even potential termination of an account. So they are monitoring that from their end right now. And as I mentioned, the preferred parking zones on 4th is what we're targeting. If we're successful with that, we're looking to have that in place by the 17th. If we're successful with that, then we'll actually look at expanding that further throughout the downtown area, just again to make sure that we have a very organized look on the sidewalk and we're not competing with different modes on the and uses. So we're excited about that. And then again, Bird and Razor have both taken initiatives in offering these incentives to individuals to actually fall into the mold of using good behavior when they're riding. And we'll be stenciling on the sidewalk that says, this is for e-scooters. We'll actually be stenciling that on the sidewalks as part of the preferred parking zone. And then the special events, it occurred for not only for the 4th Avenue Street Fair, but we also did it for the Winter Haven Lighting Festival. So we just wanted to make sure that we didn't have those conflicts between the pedestrian and the e-scooters. So we are working with them still on their social media package. We feel there's a little bit of an opportunity to continue to improve on that. And so, and they're being good partners. They're coming to the table. We suggested about doing pop-ups through maybe some game ads and stuff, but they don't feel that's quite the right market. So we're going to have a conversation about maybe a social media network that we do in collaboration with the City of Tucson and Bird and Razor. So it's really being marketing throughout the city versus maybe just targeting certain individuals that may not necessarily even be using an e-scooter. So we're having that conversation, and they are being good partners coming to the table about that. So that's about all of it I have. If y'all have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Can you describe a little bit more what actions were taken for the 4th Avenue Street Fair?
So for the 4th Avenue Street Fair, they actually created a geofence. And what that did is that if anyone did come in with a scooter, it actually cut the scooter down or off so that you could not ride the scooter within where the pedestrian activity was occurring as part of the street festival. Plus, they had staff on board, so if they saw a scooter in the area, they either, if it looked abandoned or someone had left it, they would actually remove it immediately. But most of the times, if they saw someone walking in with it, they would actually say, sorry, you cannot use the e-scooter within this perimeter. You need to park it over here. And we had kind of identified some parking areas for the street fair so that it wouldn't have that conflict between pedestrians and the scooters.
Councilmember Durham?
I believe that it's Bird that has the docking stations. They call them nests or something. Do you know about that?
We have not discussed that, but I can certainly raise that in a conversation with them.
Okay. And at the last council meeting, I wasn't quick enough to suggest raising the fees on the operators on Bird and Razor to pay for additional TPD enforcement of underage riding, sidewalk riding, two-up riding. Would that be an option?
So I would like to go back and, Councilman Durham, I'd like to go back and have that conversation with Bird and Razor. I'm not quite sure how that fits in their business model. We were very...
But, by the way, I think the fees are appropriately set now, but...
Right. So I think it would be a conversation that if we were going to request that of them, there might be a fee that it's actually applied to the user. So I would like to have the opportunity to have that dialogue with both Bird and Razor about how that would look and feel.
Vice Mayor?
How much longer left on the pilot?
Councilman, Vice Mayor Cunningham, we are going through March, so we're planning on coming back in March to y'all with an evaluation of what we've discovered over the 6 month.
All right, that's it.
Councilmember Fibres?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you shed a little light on the update on the results of the e-scooter survey that you launched in December?
Councilman Fibres, I do not have the results back as of yet, but I'll be happy to pull that together. We're wrapping it up, and we'll actually can send that out in advance to everyone on the council and the mayor. Yes, sir. We'll make sure we get that out to y'all.
Councilmember Kozachik?
First of all, with respect to TPD, the TPD does not have the staffing to be taken on the burden of chasing scooters down the road. So,
But I was suggesting raising the fees.
So we're going to...
Councilmember Durham, can you give Councilmember Kozachik the
I
time
don't
to?
mind a soliloquy. We're not going to be raising fees sufficient to have an agency, another academy of TPD officers that are dedicated to chasing scooters. If we're going to hire more cops, they need to be doing something more productive than chasing scooters around 4th Avenue. The purpose and intent in our own ordinance of this says it's the purpose and intent of this article to provide for the regulation of electric scooters to protect the safety of pedestrians. It's not working. We're still seeing double riding. We're still seeing sidewalk riding. We're still seeing them dumped on the sidewalks in ADA areas. We're still seeing people riding drunk. The burden, 100% of the enforcement burden continues to fall on the business owners and the residents. It was nice of Byrd and Razor to send extra staff out during the 4th Avenue street fair. That is not what happens on a daily basis. The problem happened with 4th Avenue is once they geo-fenced that area, it shifted the issue into the surrounding neighborhoods. So while they were on the perimeter, they weren't out in the surrounding neighborhoods. Another part of our ordinance says electric scooters means a self-propelled device that's designed to be operated in a stand-up mode. The Razor scooters have seats, so we're allowing them to bring model of their unit into the city of Tucson that even violates their own code. How many of these parking slots have you identified on 4th Avenue?
A total of 24 locations have been identified throughout the entire boulevard.
And are Byrd and Razor prepared to limit the number of scooters they have to the number of slots we've identified? Because right now 3,000 are allowed, and we haven't come.
Right.
We're not at 1% of that.
But they haven't actually executed that many total, even though that's what allowed. That's not what has truly been completely executed. So we did identify 24 areas, and if we feel like that's too much, then we'll regulate that, and then we can also look at expanding. But we did feel like with the areas that we've identified and the number of places for the preferred parking to occur, that we wouldn't really anticipate to have that problem. But if we did, we would definitely react to that.
To have what problem?
If we add more scooters trying to park in a preferred area, then there's spaces
we won't have
available.
that problem. They're going to be parked wherever their ride ends. They're not going to ride down to a designated parking place, sit in that slot, and then walk a couple blocks back up to the bar they were heading for. That's not going to happen. This is just really interesting that we're having these conversations with these two companies in the future tense. None of this is a surprise. It's happened in every city in the country, and they should have come into this community ready to be implementing solutions that should have been implemented everywhere else they've been asked to leave. Docking stations, Paul brought it up. They are being, it's not Byrd in Phoenix, but they are being used in Phoenix. Same way we're doing it with Tugo. And it resolves some of the problems, not the sidewalk riding, not the drunk and the double riding, but it resolves some of the parking issues. Again, with Tugo, we have a program in place where we're not allocating more bicycles than we have docking stations for. If they're serious about addressing the clutter, then have that conversation with them as well.
How many, I'm sorry, council member, how many scooters does both Byrd and Razor have in the city of Tucson?
Mayor, I'm going to ask Andy if he wouldn't step up and provide, because I don't know the exact numbers.
Okay, perfect.
They're permitted to launch up to 1,500 total.
Each?
Total. So 500 each citywide, and then there's this incentive where they can launch an additional 250 vehicles each in designated opportunity zones. To date, neither company has taken full advantage of that. It varies daily based on the number of scooters that are available, but for the last month, the average has been between 400 and 500 scooters each company, so between 800 and 1,000 total citywide.
Vice Mayor?
What's the top speed that the scooters are designed for?
15 miles per hour.
What is the, is there an accurate speed recognized by the National Transportation Council or any other of those authorities that they program in for bicycle traffic, like for bicycles?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know 15 has been pretty standard for electric scooter operations across the country.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, part of this electric scooter business is I'm thinking about bicycle traffic as well. And, you know, if you're using a scooter for a long-term trip, I'm assuming that bicycle laws would apply to scooters or vice versa. If you were comparing them as the same type of transportation, and I'm trying to figure out if bikes are capable of going, I'm assuming bikes are capable of going faster than 15 miles an hour.
Correct.
That's the norm. I also I wanted to verify that it's 1,000 between 800 to 900 total between both companies are being deployed per day.
Correct.
I think that could be a discussion when we go through. We're in a pilot program right now, but these are, again, this is what the pilot was for. We've got the scooter selfie incentive. We're looking at the parking spots. You know, if we've got 24 parking spots on each side of the avenue, up and down, and each scooter spot can apply for 5 scooters, maybe we can try to make that number a proportion on the avenue when we go revisit. We talked about the revenue issues, especially with enforcement, and I understand. I have those same concerns. We may want to take a little. We're doing $15,000 an annual pass and then 20 cents a ride. I think we as we move forward in the program, we can have the discussions at the end of the pilot on whether or not that revenue model works for us, because if we are netting general fund, then we are having the opportunity to put that into enforcement CSOs or something like that. The last piece I wanted to talk about was I think there's some opportunity with the University of Arizona where people can have premium permits. In other words, if you're going to go into the designated geofence area, we could actually have a premium scooter cost that would allow for that. And that's something, again, that the other parties, the county and the University of Arizona, would have to chime in on to collaborate with us. But there's obviously some opportunity. Finally, on a personal note, I've looked at the map. I've reviewed the map and the materials, and very impressive map, by the way, except there's no Ward 2 scooter rides. Now, look, I would like to have some, because I need to hear this perspective too. My neighbors may not be excited about it either, but if I get some, I'd like to know kind of what it's, so if there's that incentive program that you have, I don't have a lot of opportunity zones, but there's got to be some type of opportunity in Ward 2 to have I mean, can't we put one nest out there with 5 scooters at least, just to see if anybody rides them? I mean, you know, so that's kind of my thoughts on the matter. But for now, again, we're at a pilot. There's some opportunity. There's some changes that we're probably going to have to make still, some other tweaks. But I do want to say in the material that we got, both Bird and Razor have been pretty responsive in all the things they've done. Right now, you go through 5 screens. When you get on a Razor, I didn't use my Bird account recently, so sorry, Bird. But when you get on a Razor right now, you go through 5 different screens. It tells you where to park. It tells you about your helmet. It tells you about obeying the laws. It tells you about not double riding. And that's pretty comprehensive. That was actually more than I expected them to do. So those are kind of my thoughts right now. I'm not saying that this is perfect, and I'm not saying that we'll keep them in March. But I think right now, with the work that Razor and Bird have done, we should allow this pilot to continue till March for sure.
Any other comments or discussion? Alrighty, there is no action to be taken on this particular item. It was just an update, and I'm happy that we've Mayor and Council have been proactive on this issue, and especially on the issues that affect the neighborhoods and the merchants where these e-scooters are used the most. What I would like to see, I'm very happy with the action taken both by Bird and Razor, but where I would like to see more investment from the companies on are paid advertisements online. Just informing the community of the programs that they have, and talking about the safety, the parking, and the low-income program that they have. I agree with you, Vice Mayor, that we should be taking a look, and the companies should be taking advantage of adding additional e-scooters to areas of the city that have not seen the traffic of these e-scooters, so that we can, we could have our neighbors check them out, use them, and then we could be closer to the issues that e-scooters bring to the community, so we can work with transportation and the companies to make the program that much better. So with that, we're going on to the next item, which is item 14. Time has been set aside for a discussion of Park Tucson Fund. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, thank you. Members of council, this is an ongoing discussion about the budget, and again, trying to go through in some detail each of the funds, gives you ideas in terms of what their makeup is, revenue as well as expenses, also looks for policy opportunities for you to weigh in on. And so with that, just kind of keep that, this is all part of the budget process. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Diana. She does have a handout. Based on time, I've asked her to kind of fast forward through it, but she and her staff will be available to answer questions at another time as well.
So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to real quick, we are passing out real quick just some quick information, but I'm going to go through it quickly and then we can really dive into the numbers. But just a little bit of background history about Park Tucson. It was actually created in 1997. It originally was called TEAM, which stood for Transportation Enterprise Area Management, and then was later known as Parkwise. It is managed, the Park Tucson manages all of the city's parking assets. It's there to support the business districts, the neighborhood viability, and as well as public safety. And we also are considered a special revenue fund. So we have different programs, and I'm going to speak a little bit about the programs, but mainly off-street, on-street is programs. Our on-street also has a permit program, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. We have a neighborhood parking permit program, reserve parking, and also enforcement and collection. So those are all the ways that we actually generate revenue to support the parking fund. The off-street facilities, which are your garages and your surface lots, are actually made up of 6 parking garages, 4 of them which are open 24/7. The total number of spaces of those 6 garages is 3,008. The garage revenue for FYI 18-19 generated roughly around $2.9 million in revenue. We have 6 surface lots, which is 572 spaces. We do operate 3 private lots. We have 3 lots that are privately owned that we actually added into our overall public parking. It's a public-private partnership, but is known as public parking available. All of that actually generated for us last year $363,000. So those are revenues that are generated through our parking. On our on-street, which are our smart meters, we have approximately 1,717 smart meters that are in service in the downtown area. So we have 1,125, and then we also have Duncan meters, which are the little bit older time meters. Those are the ones where you can only put coins in. The smart meters are the ones where you can do coins or you can actually use a credit card. So just the difference, but we do still have some Duncan on the street. We have some on 4th Avenue, which is 380, and then in the university area, we actually have 212. The current hours of enforcement are Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's $1 an hour. And the revenue we generated last year for the on-street parking was $1.677 million. We also have what we call an on-street permit program, which is basically for students and for commuters, where they can actually come in and purchase a permit. There are some requirements that they have to meet in order to be eligible for that. And that particular program, and it allows them to park at the meter spaces using the permit instead of feeding the meter. That generated approximately $126,000, a little bit higher, $127,000 in last year. We also have a neighborhood parking program, and that's actually, there are some designated areas that are that has been established through ordinance. Grant Road, Country Club Road, 22nd Grant Avenue is the program boundary. It's petition driven, so the community, the actual neighborhood has to actually take in a petition, send it to us in order to move in that direction. The property owners have a choice between going 24/7, 7 days a week, or they can also do it with weekend restrictions only. So we do allow the property owners to make the decision about how to set and stage what they would like in their neighborhood. The charge for that is either $48 or $72 per year. And if you're caught parking in that area and you do not have a permit, you actually are given a citation. We've currently have sold 2,700, roughly around 2,700 permits, and this program actually generated over 143,000 in last year for us. So I provided it on that. I wanted to give a little bit of information because there has been some questions, because we do take part of the money that we actually generate from the neighborhoods and we put it aside for an opportunity for the neighborhood to do a reinvestment program. So Armory Park right now is one that we're working on. Recon Heights, Sam Hughes, and El Presidio have actually taken and used that to do transportation or infrastructure improvements. In Armory Park right now, we're actually working with the community actually in redoing some of their sidewalks. So these are the dollars they generate, and then they can use those dollars to make traffic or infrastructure improvements, transportation infrastructure improvements within their neighborhood. And so these are the dollars that are currently, and it does carry over year to year. So they are able to accumulate and bank the dollars. It doesn't go away at the end of the year. So it actually is a benefit for the community if they decide to move in that direction.
So I have a question about that, and this specifically pertains to the elephant in the room on this one. There are 32 spots along North 3rd Avenue. There are 32 spots along North 3rd Avenue that are adjacent to the Tucson High football stadium. And we haven't decided whether we're going to monetize them or not. And that discussion I know is ongoing, and Ward 6 I know is doing that part. But Pie Allen's there, right? Is it Pie Allen? What's the other one? Iron Horse? So they'd get the money, but and this is I'm just asking out loud, could or would it be possible for the coalition or FAMA to get part of that money? And I'm just asking, like, putting that out there. I know that's your thing, so I'm kind of, this is directed not just at the transportation staff, but also to my colleague in Ward 6.
Well, two things. First of all, we have moved that conversation forward, and TDOT is looking at putting the meters in, but only enforcing after school lets out to be responsive to some of the concerns raised by TUSD. Secondly, what you're suggesting would take a rewrite of the provisions of the parking program. Right now, the neighborhoods are the ones who are paying for it. FAMA doesn't buy permits. The neighborhoods do.
Oh, no, I meant from the meters. I meant the actual revenue from the meters.
So Diana can respond to that better.
I'm sorry. I was lost in a thought.
So if we monetize meters at Tucson High Football Stadium, except not when school's in, which I totally get, would it be possible to set aside part of that revenue for the coalition or for FAMA, or for both in some type of formula?
So it would require a revision to how the ordinance is currently drafted. That would actually have to come back to y'all to vote on it in order to actually do that. So everything is up for a conversation.
Again, I'm just putting it out there. That's more a conversation appropriate with Ward 6, but I just wanted to put it out there.
I'm much more interested, Diana, in the possibility. I'm very glad to hear, by the way, that the parking meters on the west side of Tucson High are not going to be activated until after 3 o'clock. I think it's a great collaboration and partnership with TUSD and Tucson High on that. I would further push on two things. One, how we use the funds generated by the meters. Does it pay for itself? You said it produces $1.6 million. How are those funds reinvested? Are they part of the neighborhood program, or does the program just pay for itself? How do we invest those funds?
So the dollars that are actually generated by these different programs, actually, and there is a slide in there that's provided that actually, I'm not sure if it's, there we go. So this is part of the slides as well. So in this particular case, the 5-year plan. So in this particular case, this is only the dollars that we generate through the neighborhood permit program. Certain amount of the dollars are put aside for the neighborhoods to make a potential investment. That comes out of the pocket. But overall, if you look at this up and this provided in the package, is there's actually the revenue dollars actually go in, and the total dollars we collect in revenue actually support our current expenditures. So right now we're self-sustaining, and we've been operating that way successfully over the past few years. And a lot of that also has to do is because we do have some debt service. We have 2 garages that we're currently paying off, and as well as for some LED lighting improvements that we have. So as you can see from the forecast, we'll have in the future, well, this is the 5-year forecast, oops. But there is a page that I provided to you that shows the debt service, and some of that debt service will actually be paid out. That will allow us to then look at making some investment. That could be a conversation that we have how we do it. But right now, a bulk of the dollars that we're collecting in revenue is actually paid out in the current debt service that we've already generated through the 2 garages, which is the Centro and the Pennington garage.
One of the issues that the Historic 4th Avenue Coalition and FAMA and other merchants in the area and residents is the idea of additional parking, right, and safe parking for employees. I've had conversations with HVAC and the city manager about how can we further partner with Tucson High, especially with Tucson High not being their parking structure not being in use on the weekends. Is there a possibility of the city of Tucson approaching Tucson High and asking if there could be some sort of partnership there so we can put to use that parking structure inside of Tucson High, and maybe even use it just for the merchants, staff and themselves? Is there a possibility of advancing that conversation?
So actually, thank you for the opportunity. We actually met with Tucson High today and also with TUSD on the conversation about Tucson High. There's a couple of initiatives we're working with them. One is to create a safety along 6th Street. So that's one of the initiatives that we're in the process with. We also are going to be working with them and putting together a total parking plan for them, understanding that they want to grow the school and they are looking to make some improvements. So with doing that, that's going to bring a tremendous new amount of students to the school. So they're going to pull that information together, and we're going to get together and work on an overall comprehensive parking plan. And part of that conversation was in their off hours when it's off-peak for them, would we be able to use it as a public facility to allow for that overflow parking, which they're very open to. So we're going to be working over the next 2 to 3 months putting together that plan. They're hoping to make improvements to that facility and actually expand the number of students that will be attending the school in the fall. So we want to get this comprehensive parking program put together that will benefit not just them, but also benefit the city and also keeping the respect for the surrounding neighborhood. So we started that conversation today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So one of the things also real quick, we did want to provide for y'all also a 5-year forecast, and I can get into a little bit more detail about the 5-year forecast as we move forward. The one last thing is we do collect dollars as well that goes into the parking fund as a whole for special events or when we have contractors that are doing stuff. So, and that's also going to be further conversation. That generated about $140,000 for us. And so that's really kind of, other than enforcement and collection, which is the last bit of revenue that we actually collect as part of the parking fund. And the enforcement is actually regulated under Section 20, Article 7 of our city code. There are 4 different types of fines that are actually applied, but it's mainly in the downtown area, 4th Avenue, our permitted neighborhoods, Main Gate, in the Mercado, that's where our area is focused at. So collections last year, we actually issued over 32,000 fines or citations last year. About 61.8% of those fines were collected. About 5.1% were contested and ended up going to city courts. So those are the ones folks that appealed, don't agree with the citation. And then we had about 29% that actually went to delinquent. And so those two go to the court. The court will actually then try to request payment. And if we're not successful with that, then it will actually go to a collection agencies. Scofflaws is something, this is actually when an individual has yielded more than three citations at any given time. That's completely executed. And what I mean by that is we have the ability to add on delinquent cause fees to that, and also collection fees to the current fine that's been with the issued citation. Once all of that has been executed and somebody has actually received three, we have the ability to actually boot. It hasn't really been a practice in the past, simply because the software and the limitations on the technology weren't there, but we've gotten that worked out. So we're going to be sending a memo out to y'all very soon about how we would like to proceed forward with actual booting practices, as this is also allowed already as part of our ordinance, our city code. But last year we collected roughly around $966,000 in citation revenue, and $173,000 of that automatically came over to the general fund, because part of the fine has a $10 fee in there that y'all actually goes to the general fund. So there is a direct benefit that goes to the general fund as a whole as well. Can I steal yours? Thank you. So
Mayor, before Diana leaves that particular topic, I wanted to make sure that you understood that the code currently allows us to be a little more forceful in our enforcement, which we plan to do, based on some of the information that we've seen. Folks are just allowing their parking citations to go to collections, and so we're going to be a little more forceful with that, up to and including boots. So I just wanted you to be aware that that's something we're going to be looking at. We'll get you some more information on that before that program is implemented, but that's where we're headed.
And with that particular program for booting, what concerns me is the possibility of negatively affecting families, those most vulnerable. And so I think that you have to work into that particular route, the possibility of payments for their fines, something that is equitable for people of low income.
We'll make sure
low income nature.
We'll make sure we collaborate that through the courts, because that's actually done as part of through the courts, and they actually do have a program. So we'll make sure that we're working closely with them through that process.
Thank you.
So just overall, for all those programs that I just quickly ran through, we have budgeted in this year's budget to collect almost $7 million in revenue. And then you can see our expenditures also are going to be roughly around $7 million as well, and this is including our debt service. So in the 5-year plan, and what we're recommending to forecast for you is looking forward. This is taking into consideration our debt, and as you can see, we actually have our fund balance increase. So in the future, we have the opportunity of having the conversation, and I don't want to limit to where just the city is looking at providing a garage, but maybe where there's opportunity to partner with the private sector and do a public-private partnership, so that we're actually getting some really good standalone garages aren't really the best practice. It's better to do some type of practice where there's other elements that play into it, but there is some private sector opportunities built into that. So I think we have started that relationship with some of the private companies out there today, and we're hoping that we'll be able to build on that. And as some of our debt service actually frees up, we'll have a chance to make some of those investments to where we could look at adding additional parking into garages that is being built by the private sector, but we'll have public representation in there. So that's the direction where I actually would recommend or would like to move toward. So, and then there is also a page in here that does show our debt programming. So we just wanted to make have that as well. I lost my pages. So to move forward, just a few things, because there is some future opportunities. New technologies there's some new technologies out there that are offering. We're looking at going to some gateless equipment, which is a person can just pull in and out, and their tag is actually read. We actually do that now, license plate recognition. We actually do that through our enforcement practice, so we have that ability. We're also looking at improving the app, so we have a very smart technology that we're using, and it's more seamless to the consumer. And we're trying to tie that app also into our transit side, so it's seamless to park and then jump on our Sunlink or on our Suntran and actually use those two options together. So we're looking at that. Other opportunities is parking demands. As we see some of our parking spaces, which is actually going to be another conversation I'm going to be having with y'all in just in a couple slides, but as the parking demand changes, so as growth happens, but also as we're losing some parking, the parking demand is changing, so those are some opportunities for us, and we're losing that also to development, so that's a good and a bad thing. Pricing structure, how we're currently priced, I think that there's an opportunities for us to be a little bit more strategic in how we're currently structuring our price. And then curb management. What is really the best use of the curb? We have a lot of competition for the curb between food trucks, parking, bicycles, e-scooters, you name it, we're all competing for the curb. So what really, or even streetscape for that matter, to follow our complete street initiatives. So what really is the best use of that? So those are some of our future opportunities that we have that we need to look at and take into consideration. So some solutions that we've actually have, and y'all have been sharing in some of these conversations is, the opportunity to look at expanding our hours of enforcement to include nights and weekends. As I'd mentioned in an earlier slide, we're 8 to 5 at $1 each. That's where the pricing structure. Right now, our on-street parking should actually be much more expensive than our off-street. So our surface lots and our garages should be inexpensive, and that's where you want your long-term parking to go into. And then you would use your on-street parking for those short-term parking turns. So we're a little bit unbalanced in that, and that, again, it's about being a little bit more strategic. So we think there's some opportunities in the future to have conversations. I talked a little bit about the public and private partnership. We feel those are some great solutions. And we also want to maximize some on-street parking, so we talked about 3rd Avenue over by Tucson High. But the Mercado is actually, in the past, we had actually come before y'all. It was approved for us to actually move forward with putting meters in on Mercado. We haven't done that. We would like to proceed forward with that. There's a huge parking demand there, and we just feel that the timing is right, that we get in there and actually do that. So those are some opportunities and solutions. And then one of the things we want to discuss with you is also a fee proposal for removal of public parking spaces. So currently right now, if a developer comes in and wants to take and improve the streetscape and look at removing on-street parking, which is removing public parking spaces from the downtown area or from 4th Avenue, which at times is critical because we should be looking at how we're actually balancing the parking needs. We actually require them to pay $20,000 per space that they remove. The actual average cost for a garage space today is $25,000. So we're already in a deficit there. So we want maybe a consideration of raising that rate if y'all want to stay with the $25,000. The other opportunity that we think can go on the table is perhaps maybe require them to pay 20 years of lost revenue. And that could vary depending on where the parking is. Or we could actually ask them that they provide us parking that, or replace the general public parking spaces. My preference is if you're going to remove on-street and you're going to build a garage, move that general public parking spaces to your garage and give it to us for general public use. So those are some policy decisions that we kind of need some direction from y'all that we'll be bringing back at a little bit more, but I just wanted to throw it out there because those are some really serious conversations that we need to have with y'all, and y'all give us direction about it. But right now we are, if someone's removing general public parking spaces, requiring them to reimburse the fund for $20,000. And as I said, we're already operating at a deficit because the current cost is about $25,000 on average for a parking garage. And
can you give me examples as to where that has happened?
So over on
one area was City Park, right on Congress here. That was actually an area where I forget exactly the number, but we lost a few spaces, and they paid $20,000 for that. And so that was or at least that was the plan. And so again, where we lose a space, there's two opportunities. One is write a check, or continue to write us a check for the lost revenue. So those are conversations, and that's always a difficult discussion because a lot of those spaces are not lost for another reason, but because they have no room for garbage pickup and those kind of things when you're trying to redevelop and you're trying to keep everything as best you can within the footprint that exists. And so it makes it a tough conversation, but it's definitely worthy of further exploration because of the impact it has to the overall system.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the name of the development, so thank you. And then, of course, I just really wanted to, the last page is talk a little bit about the safety fund program, because in the budget this past year, you actually authorized to take $75,000 from the citation revenue and move it over to the general fund for our safety program. So I wanted to take the opportunity and kind of give you an update of where we are with that. So $4 of every citation that was collected last year actually got moved over for our safety program. And again, that's focusing in on the 5 E's. On the enforcement side, we're actually implementing, we have dollars in this program to implement 2 safety corridors, and Councilman Fingers is actually giving us additional dollars through a grant for 2 additional corridors. So we're really excited. We're going to be bringing the plan back to him for those 2 additional corridors. So in the next 2 months, we're looking at adding 4 new safety corridors to the city. So we're really excited about that, and thank you very much. Evaluation, we've actually purchased some speed feedback signs. That's allowing us to go back, and we're putting it out. It goes dark first, and it kind of will check, it collects volume, it collects speed, it's collecting the data of what's happening on the road, and then we turn it on and see how people behave once we turn it on. So it helps us make a better evaluation about good traffic calming practices, what the speed limit might be a better consideration, what the actual volume is on the road, because everything's kind of done at a high level. So again, we're allowing to use that information, and it helps us evaluate about how we can better provide safety on the roads as a whole. Education, we've been working with the police department. I hope over the weekend, I was watching the news over the weekend, and I kept seeing a lot of the PSAs pop up for pedestrian safety, and that was really exciting for us. So we've been putting dollars into the advertisement, and it was really exciting because a lot of that advertisement was coming out also with what the state was running on no texting. So I was really excited to see those back-to-back, PSAs coming out to how hopefully people will grab a hold of and use that so that we have things happening safer on the roads. Engineering, again, we're doing some spot improvements, flashing warnings, our hawks, some in-ground pavements. We're going to be actually going out and stenciling at crosswalks to please press the buttons. We'll be doing this in both Spanish and English throughout the whole city. So we're really excited about that. And then encouragement is really working with the different events such as Ciclavia, and then providing some giveaways that remind people to press the buttons, watch both ways, be respectful, and so those are the encouragements. So I just want to let you know how we were spending the $75,000 and what it was going toward, and some of the great things that are coming out of it. So thank you. And with that, I'll take any questions.
How about reflective equipment and gear? For a lot of the pedestrians wear dark clothing, and they're the ones being hit at night.
Yeah.
DPD is trying to get more additional resources.
Yes, sir. We actually, $10,000 of the safety things actually went over to PD, and they actually purchased reflective backpacks. So some of those folks, out on the street that we're having some challenges with, that are in the dark clothes and out there, the police department actually has a bunch of them in their cars, and they're passing them out. They also have these they're like wraps, so you can wrap them around things, and then that way they can put it on their own clothing or whatever, so that it acts as another, they'll make them stick out when the headlight hits them. So we actually used $10,000, plus we got a grant, so we were able to take the $10,000 and with the grant match it, so we were able to actually get $25,000 out of $10,000. So we were really worth of merchandise and goods, so we were really excited about that.
Good job.
And the police department, well, I would like to take credit for that, but I have to give that to Captain Duffy, because Diana Duffy is actually the one who went after that grant. So, and that was a great one. So we just provided we gave him the bank. She went and got the money. So I was really excited about it. Thank you.
So you're essentially, your revenue is paying for your expenditures. So we can't raid your coffers.
Not at this time.
Just kidding. Any questions or comments? Council member?
Diana, what's the machine sweeper purchase, about $72,000 in the fiscal year 20 budget?
We put in a request to actually purchase it for the garage, to actually buy a sweeper that will go through and clean the garage. So that would be part of the maintenance program. Right now we outsource it, and it's going to be a lot more less expensive for us to bring it in-house and do it ourselves. But we do not have the equipment, so we actually built in to buy that equipment. So moving forward, we'd be able to maintain our garages.
Has the machine been purchased yet?
I'm not 100% sure on that. Let me check and I'll follow back up with you, sir. It hasn't. No, I'm being told no, it has not. Thank you.
All righty, we're moving to item. We don't have any motion or any direction to give you. All righty, so let's move to item 15. Time has been set aside for an update on the creation of an anti-displacement task force. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, members of the council, this is a follow-up to a couple of different conversations we've had formally and many conversations informally. And I've actually been quoted as saying this is the one topic that keeps me up, because it's extremely complex and has many tentacles, and it's very emotional as well for a lot of folks. And I think that as time goes on, folks might think the solutions are obvious or easy, and they aren't. They're very difficult and far-reaching in terms of potential solutions. So you asked me to come back with some thoughts on a task force. I gave you a lot of data in the memos and then the background material. I'm actually going to change part of the recommendation here in a minute, and I'll tell you why. I think that some of the feedback I got from you really informs an opportunity for us going forward. But before I do that, I wanted to just let you know that we're not the only ones that are dealing with this and struggling with this. I've spoken with the managers of Kansas City, Austin, San Antonio, Portland, and Vancouver. And I will be meeting with them again later this month to talk about what they've done. And I can tell you the good news is that we are ahead of where they were in their development of this issue. And so there are some opportunities, and I can also assure you that no one's figured it out. There are no answers that are uniform or that we can point to and say that will work for all of us. So there's three pieces to this. The first is really identifying the problem, and so when we look at gathering some folks together, it's really the identification of the problem. Councilmember Feinbris, he's not here, but in his leadership in the past regarding, oh, there he is, his leadership in the past regarding the poverty urban stress report really started that process of data generation. But that's just the first piece, because that's only the data. The second piece of that is the analysis of that data and the development of recommendations. The second part of the task force or the group's emphasis would be on identification of funding sources, opportunities for how and where dollars might be available for this, what is the magnitude and what's the best use of dollars that might be out there. Certainly there's plenty of community development monies that come into the community, but how are those dollars used in relationship to this difficult and important issue? Then the last is to develop strategies and what I'll call policy guidance for the mayor and council. I mean, here you have a group of folks that will vet various data and analyze it, develop strategies for implementation of policy that would ultimately inform it. So now the change in my thoughts. So initially you had mulled over the opportunity for us to establish a task force. There was conversation about whether that task force should be a manager-appointed task force, which would not be subject to the OML, or a council-appointed task force, which would be subject to OML. But as you know, over the last several years, we've been trying to scale back the number of task forces and commissions that we have across the city. So credit to the mayor in conversation, and some of you actually said, we really need to bring some specificity to this group in terms of what is the relationship with the mayor and council. And so the conversation really has evolved into a potential for reconstituting the Housing Commission. We've got a municipal housing commission. I think it's worthy of exploring reconstituting that into a housing and anti-displacement commission, which can then not only the reconstitution of the housing piece of that, but also give specificity in terms of membership and also what the expectations are for the council to come back to the council with some guidance and some conversations. So what I would suggest is everything still holds, right, in terms of the action plan and everything that was in the document, but I'm really starting to think that maybe rather than establishing a separate group, that we reconstitute the Housing Commission into this new group and really start looking at an action plan specific to them. So that'd be my suggestion, at least. And again, I apologize for that kind of last minute, but it just seemed to make sense after having conversations with several of you. It just seems to make sense that we may want to move in that direction. Not opposed if any of you really want us to pursue a separate group, not opposed to doing that. We have the framework outlined for you. I do think that a 15-member board is tough in terms of management of that. We may want to consider scaling that back. The difficulty was identifying what groups, right? And so I think maybe the discussion is really around representatives from multiple groups, right? So that we can have maybe less folks sitting around the table, and then it gives you opportunity ultimately to make those appointments. So with that, Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I've got Albert and also Ann Shineka, who was on the team that went and visited Austin and San Antonio to help inform a lot of this. She's available as well. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. This conversation is not a new one. The concern about affordable housing, the concern about anti-displacement, and displacement in not just downtown, because we have seen close to $2 billion of investment, both public and private, in downtown. And this is where we see much more of it. But I believe that the lack of affordability throughout the city of Tucson is an issue. We have seen several newspaper stories pointing to the issues of affordability in our community, especially for working families, for seniors, for the most vulnerable. One of the thoughts behind creating the anti-displacement and gentrification task force was, and I'll tell you because I made the motion when I was sitting right there in the Ward 1 seat, was because the conversation has been happening for at least a year and a half throughout the community. And there is a coalition of neighborhoods that have been sitting down and having discussions about this issue, this concern. I like the idea of reconstituting the Metropolitan Housing Commission so that we're not recreating another task force, knowing that the Housing Commission is there at our disposal that has very similar goals, right? Some of the goals as the Housing Commission has is serve as an innovative and creative deal maker and catalyst for developing low-cost housing, identifying new capital resources and making them available for affordable housing, identifying work towards eliminating institution and regulatory barriers for affordable housing, and then framing priorities. And so the Metropolitan Housing Commission is already there. I would love to be able to include all the goals that Mayor and Council specified when we gave direction for this anti-displacement task force to be included into the Metropolitan Housing Commission, and then reconstituting, reimagining it to make sure that one, that Mayor and Council has a possibility of appointing that, and that two, the appointments serve very specific concerns, that we have experts that could guide and lead Mayor and Council and staff to make decisions that are good for our community. even moving in this direction, I don't think that the Housing Community Development Department has to wait on us reconstituting this commission. I want to make sure that we are empowering, as mayor and council, we are empowering Liz Morales from the Housing Community Development Department to put in use whatever she has at her disposal to add to this concern. And so I would like to entertain, if it's possible, a motion to revamp the Metropolitan Housing Commission to include the past functions in addition to issues of anti-displacement, homelessness prevention, and
utilizing the housing first model.
Highlighting the housing first model. So I'd like to put it out there.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that motion from Councilmember
So there's a motion and a second, and any discussion?
We've been trying to address this issue and be prepared and be proactive in it. And we've seen articles. I think Sunday there were 2 articles in it. Last week there were another article on it. And the Housing Coalition that we meet with and you participate in also has brought this up. And the Homeless Coalition has also brought this. So there's some challenges that we have in this community, but we're being proactive and we're taking those challenges and turning them into opportunities for us in our community to be a model for the rest of the county and the rest of the state. And I think that you don't have to create another commission, just retweak and revamp what we have now and give them a mission. And I think that's why I made the motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Fimbres. Vice Mayor?
Just wanted to add in, and I know it's swirling, I know we're talking about it. I want to make sure we're including dialogue with the constable's office. And the reason I wanted to put that out there is it's been a long time coming that HCD and constables should be collaborating. The job of a constable isn't the 1970s job where a dude shows up and kicks you out of your house. The constable's job is doing social work and stuff now. We have 2 or 3 constables that I know on a personal level are literally they're even calling Ward 2 to collaborate for services people who are being displaced. So the fact that we're not including the constable's office in any type of task forces I think it's always been talked about. I just don't think we've ever codified it. So let's go for that. And I think that with that type of collaboration, and we put it on the record now, I think we'll see some headway, at least for some relief on what's going on the front lines. And that's when we're getting. The bottom line is this: we've just passed a minimum wage law at $12 an hour, but we still have people who are working, who are getting evicted. And we have the 6th highest minimum wage in the country. So think about that. So let's be number one. Let's be that area where, hey, you know what? If you're working, there's a really good, and you're in that unfortunate situation about being displaced, we've got to have a safety net for you. And I'm totally okay with that.
Excellent. Councilmember Santa Cruz?
I just wanted to add, and I don't know if this ends up looking like a friendly amendment to it, but making sure that we're continuing to center equity as part of the conversation and the framework that we're looking at all of this, so that when we're talking about affordability, we're talking about preserving affordability, because a lot of the displacement that's happening is in communities that were typically seen as affordable places to live. And then with that also, having the framework of having mixed income communities that we want to move in that direction.
I think that's part of the input that's given to the city manager, because that's going to be part of the mission of the Housing Commission. And in the revamping or the reconstituting, these goals that mayor and council set for this particular commission should be included in that. I also want to bring attention to when mayor and council gave direction for the task force to be put together, it called out for neighborhood representation, nonprofits, and groups focused on affordable housing and local culture equity, local businesses. It also had other key stakeholders and governmental entities. I think it's really important on the task force, though, the recommendation was for governmental entities not to have a vote. But I think it is not productive for at least the City of Tucson Housing Community Development Department not to have a voice or a vote in that commission. And the only reason I bring this up is because we want to make sure that we are also empowering and informing the process. So I would highly encourage that we empower our department director or her designee to be able to add that voice and that helpful direction to the commission to make sure that whatever the action plan, whatever the movement forward from this commission is actually doable. Because it's not helpful if we have an action plan and recommendations by this commission if they're not doable. And so I just want to make sure that that voice is there, not to limit the creativity, not to limit as to thinking outside the box, but just to make sure that we can do that. And then another thing that I'd like to make sure that we add to this is that we look outside of just thinking CDBG and HUD. I think it's really important that we start pushing on low-income housing tax credits for these projects, on going after federal and state grants for these projects and these programs. And so it could actually be a very productive and functional and necessary working commission to benefit the community on this. So, yes, Councilmember Kozaczek.
So we're talking about reconstituting the commission. It's still listed on the website. Roger, has it been disbanded? Because there are members listed right now.
The commission still exists because it hasn't been disbanded. However, we haven't had a meeting of that commission in about 2.5 years.
So is the assumption that the people who are listed on there as existing members would continue to be members and we just backfill? Because there are only eight listed, 15 available. Yeah, so we're just going to be filling. And also in the description of the commission, it lists who they should represent: neighborhood advocates 4, developers, builders 4, real estate 3, community partners 4. The motion
what I would envision is that based on merging the idea of the task force, which had very similar makeup. The makeup at the task force that we envisioned when we pushed this motion last year was neighborhood representation, nonprofit groups focused on affordable housing, equity and local businesses. It also had other key stakeholders, government entities. And so what I would envision this motion to give direction to the city manager on is look at how do you merge both the goals of the task force, which we had envisioned, and what the Housing Commission is, and then how do you rewrite what the commission's purpose and mission will be. And so that's what I envision taking.
So that will require a
shape.
rewriting
Yes.
of this.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor,
Yes.
Councilman Kozaczek, it was not my assumption that we would just leave the commission the way it is and then add duties. I think it's more than that. I think it's truly rewriting scope, direction up to and including the qualifications for participants. Keep in mind that's 15 members as well, and we may want to rethink that as well. So there's an opportunity, I think, to really look at it on a pretty holistic and look forward to what other opportunities might be to get to where we're headed.
Right.
Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Since you're taking notes, Mr. Manager, could we I just also just want to point out that we make sure that this is being like data and people driven. And the reason that I'm saying that is that a lot of times we have like the experts or the talking heads at the table who are looking at things up here, that it's so important that we're looking at our own data from our own housing department to see like what are the needs that are coming through that door, like what are the issues that people are having, like where are those gaps in service, and making sure that people have access to housing. So using that as data for us to like guide our thinking. Also just that, I don't know, that this committee be out in the community, you know, talking to folks as well. That it not be just like I'm at the table because I'm an expert in this field and I have no connection with the issues with the people that are experiencing displacement or homelessness. So making sure that they're thinking outside the box too with how we engage our community.
And on that note, Councilmember Santa Cruz, all the more reason to update the Poverty and Urban Stress Report that the City of Tucson had been doing for, I would say, easily 20 to 25 years. And so the last time we saw an update of that report was I would say 2012. And so I think it would be good timing to do an update at that report, because what we want to do is based on data, right? We want to make decisions based on data where the need is. And that report was very, very helpful when it came to allocating funds and investment, both CDBG and HUD money. And so that we see areas of poverty and need throughout the city of Tucson. We just need to know where exactly we need to direct this investment. And so do you have a plan attached with this, or maybe even before? I know that Mayor and Council have given direction before to update this plan. Is anything in the works to update it?
Mayor, as you know, I brief you individually every couple of weeks, and I would say that this is the first topic that Councilmember Fimbres brings up, wanting to know where we are with it. So let me give you a quick update. We have been working on it and looking at it, but keep in mind that the Poverty and Urban Stress Report was data that was then used later for different purposes. So it was a data set, if you will. One of the things that we're looking at here is the data is one piece, but then really translating that into action. And so using that data is going to be the key as we move this forward. And so, and we didn't call it the Poverty and Urban Stress Report. We called it the Neighborhood Vulnerability Index and Housing Market Study. So that second bullet under engagement strategies, that's what we're talking about. Is it's not the Poverty and Urban Stress Report in its exact form. It's actually more than that. It's the Poverty Stress Report and the action, the vulnerability in action. So we are on it. That's part of this whole effort, because I agree with you. It can help inform investment. It can help inform policy conversations, and those are all part of these efforts that are ongoing. So we'll keep you posted as this moves forward.
Perfect. Any other comments?
Yes,
Councilmember
Madam
Fimbres?
Chair, I know that they've been working on it, and I think they're going to get a draft to us by February, is what I'm hearing, and we need to move on this because it's been a while, and we brought this up, and Mayor and Council approved it, and
Roll call.
Ms. Santa Cruz.
Here.
Mr. Cunningham.
Here.
Mr. Durham.
Here.
Mrs. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Fimbres. Here. Mr. Kozaczek. Mayor Romero.
Here. Item 2.
Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
The invocation today will be given by Ted Przalski, staff member for Ward 2, Vice Mayor Paul Cunningham, and Benedictine Oblate. After the invocation, I will ask you that you remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. This is a prayer that was written by Frank Borman, who was a graduate of Tucson High School and commander on the Apollo 8 mission. Give us, O God, the vision which can see thy love in the world in spite of human failure. Give us the faith to trust the goodness in spite of our ignorance and weakness. Give us the knowledge that we may continue to pray with understanding hearts and show us what each one of us can do to set forth the coming day of universal peace. Amen.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 2C.
Presentations.
I would like to proclaim January 20th to be Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Day of Service. Pastor Grady Scott from the Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, member of the MLK Committee, is here to accept the proclamation. Please come forward. Alrighty, we're going to read it. So, whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. devoted his life to advancing equality, social justice, and opportunity for all, and challenged all Americans to participate in the never-ending work of building a more perfect union. And whereas Dr. King's teachings can continue to guide and inspire us in addressing challenges in our communities, and whereas since 1994, millions of Americans have been inspired by the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to serve their neighbors and communities on King's Holiday. And whereas serving on the King's holiday is an appropriate way to honor Dr. King, meet local and national needs, bring our citizens together, and strengthen our communities and nation. And whereas the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service is the only federal holiday commemorated as a natural day of service, offering an opportunity for Americans to give back to their communities on the holiday and to make an ongoing commitment to service throughout the year. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service projects are being organized by a committee of nonprofits, community organizations, and other entities, including the American Red Cross, Southern Arizona Chapter, Arizona Serve, Corporation for National and Community Service, Girl Scouts of Southern Arizona, Prescott College, Service for Peace, and Tucson Service Learning Group. And whereas citizens of Tucson have an opportunity to participate in events throughout our city on the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, January 20th, 2020, as well as to support ongoing volunteer needs and commit to meaningful service throughout the year. Now, therefore, I, Regina Romero, Mayor of the City of Tucson, Arizona, do hereby proclaim January 20th, 2020 to be the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service in this community, and call upon the people of Tucson to pay tribute to the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. through participation in community service projects on Martin Luther King Jr. Day and throughout the year. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Tucson, Arizona, to be affixed this 7th day of January 2020. Congratulations. Would you like to say a couple of things? Please invite us to some of these projects.
Yes.
First, I would like to thank Mayor and Council and the entire city of Tucson for their support for the Martin Luther King weekend historically down through the years. I'd also like to invite every citizen of Tucson to the events that would be taking place this weekend. January 17th at Grace Temple Baptist Church will be the Ministers Alliance celebration. And then Saturday at the Boys and Girls Club on 36th Street will be our prayer breakfast. And then the march begins on Monday. The parade begins on Monday from Martin Luther King Way to Reed Park. The entire city is welcome to come. We thank you for the proclamation. We'll make sure that it is read there. Thank you again.
Item 2D.
Appointments to boards, committees, and commissions. Report from City Manager.
City Manager's communication number 1, dated January 7th, is received into and made part of the record. May I have a motion to approve the appointments in the report?
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Are Ms. Erickson, Ms. Waigwa, Sarah Mask, Mr. Stratton, Mr. Morgan, and Ms. Sotero present today? I would like to thank you for your willingness to serve the city of Tucson. And with that, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried 7-0. Are there any personal appointments to be made at this time?
Madam Chair, I would like to
Councilmember
appoint
Fimbres?
Bob Gugino as the Ward 5 representative to the 2017 Public Safety Tax Oversight Commission and Janine Mortimer as the Ward 5 representative to the Parks Tucson Commission. I sent this information to the city clerk's office.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Item 3.
Mayor and Council report, summary of current events.
City Manager's communication number 2, dated January 7th, is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow members of the Mayor and Council to report on current events. Are there any current events to be reported? Council Member Fimbres.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to wish my colleagues on the council, city staff, and the good citizens of Tucson a happy New Year, and may we have a successful 2020. I want to congratulations to both the South Tucson Rams youth football program as well as the Tucson Raiders youth football program for the success on the gridiron recently. The 10U Southwest Rams won a bid to the American Youth Football National Championship in Orlando, Florida. They won their first 2 games but came up short in the championship game. The Rams battled until the last whistle, and we're all proud of their efforts. The Tucson Raiders sent 13 U players to the tournament as part of a Tucson All-Star team, and for which they won 3 games but fell short in the national championship also. The Raiders went to thank JL Investments, Gugino Mortimer Law Firm, Tucson Iron and Metal, Crest Insurance, and the Ward 5 Council Office for their help to get the players to the tournament. I want to congratulate and say farewell to Michael Ford, who has served on our community as well as South Tucson's police chief, as the Primavera Outreach, and the Ward 5 representative of the City of Tucson's Public Safety Tax and Oversight Commission. Michael has received an offer to serve as the police chief for the Reno Sparks Indian Colony in Nevada, for which he has accepted. I want to thank Michael for his service to our community and wish him the best as the new police chief for the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. Michael's leadership, knowledge, and expertise will be missed. On December 18th, Ward 5 Council Office held our annual holiday party. My staff and I worked to put this annual event. I want to thank Barrio Brewery, Khalil Bottling, Regal's Restaurant, Cora's, Mark and Erica Bilbo and Sunny Days Restaurant, Los Jarditos for their donations of food and soda for the event. I also want to thank my wife Mary for making her tamales and cookies. I want to thank my staff, Mary Kuchar, for their decorations and cookies she baked, as well as Lupita Robles and Mark Kerr for their work for this event. I also honored the people who have helped our community, including the following city employees: Parks and Recreation Director Brent Dennis, TPD Officer Ricardo Scooby Fernandez, TPD Sergeant Will Corrales, Pat Tapia, Deputy Director EGSD, City Manager Michael Ortega, Andrea Flores from the City Manager's Office, Assistant Fire Chief Joe Gallardo, Renee Romero from the General Services Department, David Manzo for the General Services Department, Oscar Figueroa from the General Services Department, and Patricia Smith with the General Services Department. I thank them for their hard work and in working with the citizens of Tucson to improve their quality of life. The Public Gardens Neighborhood Association will hold their 30th annual Martin Luther King breakfast on Saturday, January 18th at the Boys and Girls Club at 2585 East 36th Street. Doors open at 7:15 and breakfast will be served at 8 a.m. The breakfast is free, but donations are greatly appreciated and will be accepted at the door. All money earned will be used to continue the tradition of helping area school-aged youth with scholarships for programs to help them realize their dreams. The Public Gardens Neighborhood Association is the only neighborhood in the city of Tucson to honor Dr. King in this way, working to keep his dream alive. Congratulations to the Public Gardens neighborhood for their 30th annual MLK breakfast. I would like to give a shout out to our Tucson Roadrunners hockey team, who have the best record in the American Hockey League at 25-7-1, a .773 winning percentage. Roadrunners head coach Jay Vardy was selected by the AHL to coach the Pacific Division and the AHL All-Star Classic January 26th and 27th in Ontario, California. Tucson Roadrunners forward Lane Peterson and defenseman Kyle Kobobinko were named to the Pacific Division team for the AHL All-Star Classic. Congratulations, and let's go Roadrunners. Lastly, the 95th annual Tucson Rodeo Parade, the largest and oldest non-mechanized parade in the United States, will take place on Thursday, February 20th, with the parade route in my ward. I am looking forward to the mayor and my colleagues joining me and the city manager to be in the rodeo, and the city police chief to be at the parade again this year. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Fimbres. Councilmember Durham.
This time of year, I find it's always helpful to pause for a moment and take time to reconnect with constituents and stakeholders independent of any pressing matter. To that end, I'd like to invite ward constituents and stakeholders, my colleagues, and our city employees to join me and the Ward 3 team for our annual open house Thursday, January 30, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Ward 3 office at 1510 East Grant Road. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the great work of a community advocate and educator who left us too soon. Maureen Hazlitt passed away peacefully in her home on New Year's Day.
I didn't know that.
The Ward 3 team and I extend our condolences to Maureen's family, and we join the many who are grieving the loss of this faithful friend. Maureen was a champion for the Amphi neighborhood for many years. She was an advocate for the creation of the Amphi Neighborhood Park and has built connections amongst disparate organizations and groups to improve the park. I want to thank Maureen's family for her service to our community. A funeral mass will be held on Saturday, January 10th at 11 a.m. at the Saturday, January 10th at 11 a.m. at the Sacred Heart Parish located at 601 East Fort Lowell Road.
Thank you, Councilmember Durham. I, too, would like to share unfortunate news about a passing of a community advocate. Dr. Leonard Basurto passed away the first day of the year. He proudly served with Pima Council, PCIC, which is Pima Council, Pima County Interfaith Council, for many, many years, served proudly for the community of 12th Avenue, Wakefield, and all the neighborhoods surrounding San Juan, St. John the Evangelist Catholic Church. He will be greatly missed, and we will keep you all informed in terms of the services for Dr. Basurto. But it was a great loss for the community. So it's with mourning and with respect to the family, to the Basurto family, that we report his passing.
I'd like to also say that he was a long-time area superintendent for TUSD, and he did a lot for the students there, and he also was a principal at St. John's Church. But we also passed a long-time city employee who retired from the city Parks and Recreation Department, Carlos Guzman, who passed away of a heart attack also during the holiday weekend. And on a sad note, I lost my aunt, Carmen, who was 95 years old, had a heart attack and passed away the day after Christmas. So thank you.
Unfortunate news. And we move forward with item 4.
City Manager's Report, Summary of Current Events.
City Manager's Communication number 3, dated January 7th. It is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow the City Manager to report on current events. Mr. Manager?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Item 5.
Liquor License Applications Report from City Manager.
City Manager's Communication number 4, dated January 7th, is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, please read the liquor license agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's liquor license agenda, under item 5B, we have 3 requests for new license, 1 request for person transfer. Under item 5C, we have 6 requests for special events. Under item 5D, we have 5 requests for agent change, acquisition of control. Staff has indicated that all the applicants are in compliance with city requirements. An appropriate motion would be to forward items 5B 1 through 4, C 1 through 6, and D 1 through 5 to the State Liquor Board with a recommendation of approval.
May I have a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I move to forward the liquor licenses to the State Liquor Board with a recommendation of approval. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 6.
Call to the audience.
At this time, any member of the public is allowed to address the mayor and council on any issue except for items scheduled for a public hearing at this meeting. Please make sure you have read the information on the back of the speaker's card before making your presentation. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations. Call to the audience is scheduled to last for 30 minutes. Pursuant to the Arizona Open Meeting Law, individual council members may ask the city manager to review the matter, ask the matter be placed on a future agenda, or respond to criticism made by speakers. However, the mayor and council may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during call to the audience. And we will start with Martha McClements.
Good evening. My name is Martha McClements. I live at 336 East 16th Street here in Tucson. One, thank you for doing the appointment, getting Helen Erickson on our advisory board. But I'm here just as a person who lives in Armory Park and would like to request that you find a new home for the Dusk Festival. It has been in the neighborhood park of Armory Park for the past 2 years, and it is a really inappropriate venue for what could be a successful, wonderful event. It encloses the entire park for up to 5 days, blocks the streets. I could go into the noise, but the city has spent lots of time with lots of people trying to figure that one out, and it will never happen. It's a great event. It should not be in Armory Park. It needs to find a new home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McClements.
Do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Thank you. Robert Royce.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is my 269th City Council presentation in the last 19 years. And a year ago today, almost to the day, I went up to the clerk's office to inquire about running for mayor. And the next day, the mayor decided he didn't want to run for re-election, or announced he didn't want to run for re-election. And then the following Tuesday, I went up and filed to run for mayor, and The following day, Regina Romero announced she was running for mayor, which made it kind of a moot point. I should have gotten the message, but I continued to gather signatures until I figured out that Mr. Ackerley was doing better than I was. We didn't really need two independents on the ballot, and neither one of us could have beat the Democratic candidate anyway. After that, in the beginning of May, I tried to get on the ballot to run for city council in Ward 2, which only required 462 signatures. Got within 30 signatures of that, figured out Mr. Williams made it on the ballot, and once again, we didn't really need two opposing candidates, so I gave up on that. But in the process, I discovered that my Pure Water financial responsibility platform was very popular, and 3 out of 4 people that were qualified to sign my petition did, so I will continue to work on that. On the matter of this 3-minute limit, I have put down 3 riots in my life, and 2 of them I did in city council chambers at the age of 20 in Carbondale, Illinois. Mayor Eckert was very indulgent. He was totally amused by my Chicago audacity. He gave me 50 minutes to deal with the situation, and I did. And both he and the police chief took me to heart. And Carbondale, Illinois never did have another riot. But if I'd had anything less than that 50 minutes, they would have. In the city council chambers in 1998, a riot was erupting before my eyes. There were no cards, no 3-minute limit. When it came to my turn, I just started waving people through until things just got ready to explode. Then I got up, and in 6 minutes, I restored order completely in the room and eliminated the necessity of clearing the room by the police. If I only had 3 minutes, that wouldn't have worked. And finally, the last mayor was very upset with me because I don't believe anybody ever spoke to him the way I did. And one of the things he did, other than shutting down Access Tucson, which we can't undo, is he took the handicap mic, which I was using, and there would be a sign of good faith from you if you could please return it, not just for me, but for the handicapped people that used to use it. Thank you.
Joe Aldino.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Joe Aldino. I'm a Tucson resident. Many of you know that I'm the Vice Chair of the Historic 4th Avenue Coalition. I also sit in on meetings of the Barrio Neighborhood Coalition as well. And these are 2 groups that I know have pushed hard and talked a lot about displacement, gentrification, and affordability recently. And we're really encouraged by the moving forward and the proposition of the task force that was discussed earlier. That's what really I was here for today, was to hear more about the study session and hear about that. So I think we definitely have some concerns about revamping the Housing Commission to take on that responsibility. I hope that if that's something that is going to be moving forward, that we can, as the council member from Ward 1 mentioned, keep that a community-focused group. That representation from the community can be the most important thing there. The focus can remain that, and that we can also work on that as a regional entity and take into consideration how we may need to work with South Tucson, Pima County, and interact with those groups and have representation there, work with those. I hope that really, if that's the best way to do this, that that commission can take on the role of the task force that we envisioned a few months ago, as it was proposed by the new mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Item 7.
Consent agenda items A through I.
Reports from the city manager on the consent agenda are received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read the consent agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's consent agenda, under item A is approval of minutes. Item B is city vehicles, exemption of certain city vehicles from bearing identifying markings. Item C is an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Board of Regents for comprehensive evaluation of an innovative collaborative response to the opioid opioid epidemic program. Item D is a pre-annexation and development agreements with Gordon Ray, Neil W. Edmondson, Tracy L. Collette, and Craig M. Ray, owners of parcels 205-47-106B, 1070, 1080, and 1090 for water service. Item E is an intergovernmental agreement amendment with the Regional Transportation Authority of Pima County for the Regional Transportation Data Network Communication System. Item F is an intergovernmental agreement amendment with Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System for funding for Arizona State Opioid Response Grant Program. Item G is boards, committees, and commissions appointments to the Self-Insured Health Benefits Trust Board of Trustees. This item is continued from the meeting of December 17, 2019. Item H is Tucson Code amending Chapter 7, adoption of a tobacco licensing fee, amending ordinance 11703. Item I is Mayor and Council amending the 2020 Mayor and Council meeting schedule. That's the extent of the consent agenda, Your Honor.
May I have a motion, please?
I motion to approve the matters on the consent agenda.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mrs. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek? Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres?
Aye.
Mayor Romero?
Aye.
Mr. Durham?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
The items on the consent agenda are approved by a vote of 7-0. Item 8.
Public hearing, zoning C91408, Arizona Lotus, Copper Street, R2 to I1, reactivation, 5-year time extension, report from city manager, hearing.
City Manager's communication number 11, dated January 7th, is received into and made part of the record. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time and place legally advertised for a public hearing on the 5-year time extension for the completion of the rezoning conditions for the property located at 1,160 feet north of Grant Road and 220 feet west of Jackrabbit Avenue. This public hearing is scheduled to last for no more than an hour. Speakers are limited to 5-minute presentations. Please come forward when I call your name and make your presentation. State your name, whether or not you live in the city, whom you are representing, and whether or not you are a paid speaker. Is there anyone in attendance wishing to be heard on this item? If not, may I have a motion to close the public hearing, please? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor to close the public hearing? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty, this public hearing is closed. What is the councilor's pleasure?
I move we approve the request as presented.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9.
Adjournment.
Council will stand adjourned. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, January 28th at or around 3:30 or 5:30 p.m. in the Mayor and Council Chamber in the TCC. We will further post that meeting for the council, for the community's privilege. All righty. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.